Special shout out to all my patrons. Oh, come on, take guest requests.
Someone had said that it had been reported to the admin four separate times that he had a weapon, or they thought he had a weapon, or he was showing people the weapon. Um, and I just think that that's insane that nothing was done and then the teacher was shot. Do you mean lives? Lives?
Oh, maybe she...
5 times. 5 times? That is freaking insane. That is crazy. You have to get a background check when getting a gun, for sure. Which, I mean, makes sense. Da-na-na-da-da. Finally a sane live. I try to be. Sometimes I get a little crazy. I don't. What side are you on for those points? All of these? I think life with the mother exceptions are enough. I am having a bit of a moment thinking about like rape and incest, that like if it's a life, it's a life. I don't think gun taking my guns would stop shootings, and I am like a 8 out of 10 politically involved. I totally agree. Someone asked if they could ask me a question. Yes, you can. Would you be willing to discuss it? Discuss what? I'm nervous to bring guests on. I'm a little shy. Seems like people love to force women to give birth, but don't care about kids dying in schools. Who's ever said that?
Open up your guest request. Whoa, 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 whoa. At the car
If you and your child were in the car that
wash,
is sinking, who would you want saved? You or your child?
Me?
I don't know. I've never been in a situation
Me?
like that before.
The fuck? How much do I like the kid?
I want to say my child, but then there's definitely reasons where that like would be devastating either way, really. Like, it's scary. Correct. They're not gun issues, they're mental health issues. Thank you so much. Yes.
Well, I wouldn't say
But of
it's
course, when mental health
issues,
is brought up
but...
in that situation, we need to not be talking about mental health.
No, it's just conservatives don't do anything about mental health issues.
What happened at Uvalde then? What do you mean? My pro-life? Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the follow. Gay Republican here. Honestly, love that. They're so sensitive too. A lot of people are really sensitive. This is a hill I'm willing to die on.
Not
I've worked a lot of Trump rallies, and the biggest Karens were the Republican men that were there. Oh my. Okay. All right. Oh.
No, she answered
me.
She answered me. She said she would talk about a pro-life stance. Come on,
allow requests from viewers. Okay. I think I did it. I feel ancient when I do stuff like that. Oh, thanks for sharing the live. I appreciate it. Oh, guest already. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. How's it going?
I'm pretty good.
I just wanted to kind of talk. I'm pro-choice myself. I just wanted to hear your stance on why you're pro-life and see if you wouldn't mind talking about it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering why specifically you're pro-life and things like that.
I'm pro-life because it's a human, and I don't believe that there are very many good reasons to just kill an innocent human being.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's just solely it's a human, and you don't think humans should be killed. Okay.
Not humans shouldn't be killed, because I am definitely a proponent of self-defense and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe that you should be able to kill the baby in the womb. Just for the vast majority of abortions are not for medical necessity, or not for life of the mother, or not for rape and incest. I feel like that's not a good enough reason to kill a person.
When it comes to abortion, do you tend to look at it on more a legal level, on a philosophy level? Like how do you view abortions to you?
I don't think I understand the question very well.
So there are a lot of people who I think just look at it legally. where they're
Okay.
just like, I think it should be illegal to kill another person in this regard, and that's it. And they don't
Sure.
really look at it past that. They don't really care like the science behind pregnancy, the philosophy behind like whether or not we should harm, things like that. Um,
Okay.
if you view it legally, I would love to talk about like what whether or not you think abortion should be illegal or not. If you view it philosophy, we could
Okay.
talk about it in that regard. There's just
Yeah.
I've never talked to you before, so there's a million different ways
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the conversation could go.
So I definitely think that there need to be harsher restrictions on abortion. I live in Arizona, and I believe we have a heartbeat, or it's 15 weeks. I think it's back and forth on that right now. But I definitely think that heartbeat is good, except for exceptional cases. Um, and philosophy, I generally think it's morally wrong as well.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that's like what you were asking, but I think abortions are morally wrong as well.
Okay. Now see, I personally don't. I would be in the side of I don't believe there should be any governmental restrictions whatsoever on abortions. I
Okay.
think placing restrictions on abortions causes more harm. And I
Okay.
believe that abortion restrictions, which we have seen, lead to higher maternal mortality rates.
Okay.
And I'm more interested in mitigating the harm of like the beings that are already existing rather than the ones that may come into existence. So
Okay.
I view it in like a multitude of senses. And I just think that like placing restrictions just puts undue restrictions on doctors to where they can't give their patients the appropriate care that they might need.
So I personally don't believe that an abortion is ever appropriate care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like like I said, the only so I'm not sure if you heard at the beginning, I think life of the mother, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I am teetering with rape and incest because logically I believe it's a life. So if it's a life, when it's consensual, it's a life. When it's not consensual and it's the baby didn't do anything in both situations. But emotionally, and being a woman, I cannot imagine
Mm-hmm.
being in a situation like that, having something happen, and then just being like, sorry, nope, nothing you can do. So that is something I'm not 100% on. Um, but I definitely lean more emotional, I'm sure, as most people do with a situation like that. But
Mm-hmm.
logically, I'm still kind of toying with that.
Yeah, the reason why I get wary when it comes to like restrictions save for like life of the mother is
Okay.
we have case, and I'd love to talk to you about some of them, but there are cases where like because due to those restrictions women have died. So I don't know if you know who Savita I can never pronounce her last name. It's like Havana I'm going to get her Halapanavara. It's Savita Halapanavara.
No.
She was a woman who had a her water broke. She went to the hospital
Okay.
complaining of back pain. Her water broke while she was in the hospital. She
Okay.
was miscarrying. It was like 17 weeks, so the fetus wasn't going to
Oh,
survive either way. So
right.
unfortunately she was miscarrying, but due to the laws in Ireland, which is where she lived, they had a heartbeat law where if the
Okay.
fetus has a heartbeat the doctors aren't able to abort. So she had requested an abortion like 2 days or so after getting into the hospital, after she already knew that her baby was not viable. It had no chance of living. They said they couldn't
Right.
due to the law, and then they said that we have to monitor you. So they monitored her for a couple of days, and
Sure.
unfortunately, she got an infection, went septic, and died before there was anything they
Oh,
could do to save her.
right.
Ireland, rightfully so, did an inquiry into this. They did a whole investigative report to see like what happened and determined that due to their
Right.
laws, um,
Right.
she would have lived had she been able to have an abortion. And then Ireland
Okay.
immediately changed the law. Like as soon as the report was finished, they went back on their heartbeat law. So the only reason I mention this is this is some of the stuff that I'm worried can happen in the U.S. because
Sure.
imminent death of the mother is a very hard thing to prove, especially with pregnancy. Things like
Right.
sepsis and infections are hard enough to detect without a pregnancy. They become increasingly harder to detect when you are pregnant. So, what are your thoughts on how those laws would affect women in like these scenarios and things like that?
Um, I definitely think it's we should more so go on because the heartbeat bill, the way that I think about it is once the baby has a heartbeat,
Hmm.
if at some point, like she was miscarrying in 17 weeks, that baby was not going to live, at that point, it's life of the mother. Like there's nothing that can only lead to infection, that can only lead to a bad outcome.
Hmm.
I think that that should definitely play a factor in the laws that are passed. And I think it's, and a lot of people will, I've gotten that before, not that specific case, but I've gotten doctors won't do anything because they're scared. And I think it's on the doctors to know the laws and to
Hmm.
just spend time digging into the nuances and digging into what the laws mean, what they say, so that things like this don't happen. I don't think it's just the laws that are a problem. I think doctors definitely need to be looking into what the laws say and what they are able to do for these patients.
Well, so I partially agree with you. My issue though is specifically from the conservative lawmakers. These laws are very vague. When we look at
Mm-hmm.
the laws, they don't really say much of anything. So when a law specifically says you cannot abort if there's a heartbeat, they don't really have the leeway to go, well, what about inviability? Because the laws don't give them that viability leeway. So they could very well be risking their medical license, be risking their freedom, be risking all of that just, to abide by these laws. And I do believe the laws are written vaguely on purpose, but that's a whole nother thing. But
Okay.
how do we account for these? Do you think that the laws should be a lot longer? And because a lot of these abortion laws are a page, so they don't really make these exceptions readily available. And then there are some states that don't make exceptions at all. Like Texas has no exceptions, not even for life of the mother. They have zero exceptions.
Really?
Yeah, last I
Did they change
checked.
that?
Last I checked, when they changed from the heartbeat, I'm pretty sure they went no exceptions whatsoever. It might be
I'll have
like
to
it,
look
it
into
might be
that.
like death. Death might be like their only exception.
Yeah.
But again, then when you have a case like Savita's, they couldn't predict her death. You know what I mean?
Right. No, for sure. I think there should definitely be a little bit more, I don't want to say leeway because then people will take that and run with it, but more nuance
Mm-hmm.
as far as, because in her case, she was miscarrying, baby wasn't going to make it. There was nothing could have happened but an infection. And I think that needs to be taken into account when those laws are being written. I think they're vague right now because, and I don't know how to say this other than the way that I'm going to, is that they're pushing it and seeing can, what the public will accept, what the public is like, what they can kind of, how people feel. They're
Mm-hmm.
kind of testing the waters as far as, because this has not been allowed for almost 50 years to have laws like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that I'm hoping that these are more rough drafts and there will be amendments and there
Well,
will be
but
other bills that
here's
come forward.
here's what scares me with that is most of these aren't rough drafts. They're like a lot of these were written 50 years ago because a lot of states had trigger laws and they haven't
Okay,
updated the
some have
trigger
trigger
laws. They
laws.
just they said these laws that were written years ago, this is what we're going to go with. So I just worry that when we look at the way these laws are being passed and we look at what's currently happening, like I said, we've seen a rise in maternal mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry that we're going to see more abortions happening because we sort of live in a country that's more focused on ending the abortions than giving people a better choice. So when I
Oh, I like that.
yeah, so when
I
I
like
look at
that.
abortions, we have a big portion of them. I think it's around 41% or so, if I'm remembering the numbers correctly, that are due to financial reasons. Personally, I don't think
Okay,
those people should be forced to go have an abortion just because they can't afford the kid they would have rather kept. You know what I
for
mean?
sure.
They absolutely wanted to keep those kids, but they couldn't due to their own financial strain. But we don't exist in a society where the same side that is championing, putting abortion bans is
Mm-hmm.
also championing making it easier for people to actually have children. So that's something that I sort of run into when it comes to the conservative side and comes to the pro-life side, that it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem very consistent in trying to make it so people can actually stay pregnant if they want to keep the child.
That makes sense. And I think it's hard to argue when the other side is coming at you with, well, how many kids have you adopted? How many, like, just all of these, like, my stance is pro life. I don't want you to kill that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Point one. And until I can ensure that that's not happening, I can't move on to point two because point one is not, it's not happening. And I would love to have a society where, because I feel like women a lot of times are told you can't have a career and a baby, you can't be in your 20s and have a baby. You can't be like a lot of these things and have a baby. It just makes the baby competition. And I think that is tragic because babies are fantastic, in my humble opinion. I think babies are great. Um, but
Hmm.
it just is hard sometimes when it's like, okay, we could take this step in that direction and you get back, well, how many babies have you adopted? Why aren't you doing all these other things? It's like, well, I'm trying to focus on this first and then we can move to step two.
Don't you think it might be more beneficial though if the step of don't abort the baby is the last step in the process? Because I think it's hard to create societal change when we're trying to implement the final part first. So like again, when I look at like conservatives in the most recent vote to make to codify contraception, all but two Republican lawmakers voted yes. They didn't want to codify contraception and make it so that birth control was highly accessible to everybody.
Okay.
In my opinion, that kind of goes directly against your ideals of pro-life, right? Like if they really wanted Americans to have be safer and not even risk the unwanted pregnancy, wouldn't we want to make it so that contraception was not only freely available to everybody but free in general, right? Like I would say that would be one of my first, if my goal was to end to end the unwanted killing of pregnancies, that would be the very
Mhm.
first thing I would implement into law is free contraception.
One question. Is there a reason that you said unwanted pregnancies and not unwanted babies, that you like the ending of an unwanted pregnancy or an something pregnancy instead of like a baby or a fetus? Is that something like, because I've never had a lot of pro-choice people that want to have a civil conversation, so I don't get to ask questions like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that on purpose?
Well, so me personally, I don't consider it a baby, and
Okay.
I don't consider a fetus when I'm thinking about the woman's choice, because oftentimes
Okay.
their choice kind of doesn't have anything to do with the fetus. It has to do with them no longer wishing to be pregnant. And I'm just in the camp of people shouldn't have to remain pregnant if they don't consent to that pregnancy any further. So that's usually why I say unwanted pregnancy. But I mean you can sub it in with unwanted fetus, you can sub it in with unwanted baby. I'll usually swing
Okay.
whatever the person I'm talking to. I'll just use the language that makes
Sure.
them feel more comfortable. But
Okay.
like personally, I
Oh,
don't
thank you.
consider it a fetus,
Cool.
a baby, a person. I don't consider it any of that until about 20 weeks or so. A baby and a person, but whatever
You don't consider
language.
it a fetus until 20 weeks?
I misspoke. I just meant like baby in person. It's a fetus after the
Oh, I was
embryonic
like,
stage. It's and then it's a
wait.
no.
Yeah, I was
That
like,
was just
baby.
me saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, I was like, hold on a minute.
But we can. I mean, if you wanted to get into
Okay.
that conversation, we could absolutely get into like the more like meta like philosophy of it. Like why is it? Why do we consider it a person? Why do we consider it wrong? We can get into that side of it too if you wanted to.
Do you think personhood, I think the whole it's not a person, so it's not valuable. I think personhood is arbitrary. I don't think it matters. I think you being a human is enough to not want to kill you. And
Hmm.
a lot of these reasons are convenience reasons. A lot of this is just not wanting to be pregnant, not wanting to have another kid, not being able to pay for it, not wanting to do it, like just not wanting to do certain things. It's a clump of cells. I hate that argument. Sorry. I'm trying not to read the comments. Um, but lost my train of thought. There she goes. She's gone.
That's all right. What I would say is I do think personhood is subjective. I agree with you. Because a lot of people
That's
have
it.
different criteria of what makes a person a person. I don't think something being
Okay.
subjective doesn't mean we can't come to an agreement on it. And personhood, in my abortion opinion, only really affects the type of abortion. Once it has personhood, I would just change the method of abortion, but I would still grant abortions. I would just focus on abortions that prioritize the life of a fetus, such as induction or hysterotomy abortions.
Okay.
For me, personhood, I believe, has to come with a subjective experience, whether that's a conscious experience or a sentient experience. I think if we're
Ooh.
not experiencing as humans and as people, then I don't know how I can necessarily call it a person. And prior to that personhood, I do. I do like to stray away from the idea of these bulk of abortions are for convenience sake, only
Okay.
because, like I said, 41% of women who report abortions said that they
Mhm.
wished they could have kept their child. So I don't like to call it like a convenience, because to them it was a very hard decision that they had to make for
Sure.
either themselves or their current family. So I personally think any reason you want to regain your bodily resources or your autonomy, or you revoke consent, any reason for that is okay. I just, like I said,
Okay.
once it hits a certain level of personhood, I would prioritize methods of abortion that would keep it alive.
So then it wouldn't be an abortion. It would just be birth,
No, these things are
right?
all coded as abortions, medically. I've seen them. I worked in insurance for a little while, so I've seen all the codes. So
Oh God.
they're all coded as abortion.
Sure.
The term abortion, it always becomes a semantic argument, kind of, because the term abortion has unfortunately was co-opted by, and it was specifically by George Bush in 2004. He sort of coined the colloquial term of abortion, which is, death of a fetus, when really it just means the evacuation of the contents of the uterus via medical means. So an induction abortion is akin to inducing labor, and then a hysterotomy abortion is very similar to a C-section. The only thing is, right
Okay.
now they're used in tandem with a termination of the fetus, because it's usually for like medical reasons, like the fetus is harming the mother or it's unviable, things like that. I just believe we should
Okay.
take those and use them if a person is pregnant past the viability stage and they no longer want to be pregnant. We're able to keep the fetus alive, because it's at a point where it can survive on its own.
And that I agree with. I don't think you have to be pregnant for the full 9 months. If you can get past viability and we can get that baby out safely, by all means. Like I don't think you have to be pregnant the whole time. I really just stake my claim on that's a person. That's a person that had no choice in coming into existence and now is, because of a financial issue, a change in the relationship, something else, something other than medical necessity, is being snuffed out. Just I
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Can I ask, in regards to that, do you believe that someone should have to consent to be pregnant? Or do you believe that, like, once you're pregnant, you no longer have the ability to consent to what happens to your body?
I don't think you can consent to biology. I think it just
Oh, I
happens.
agree. I 100% agree with you. I think you can't consent to a biological process. I do think, though, the minute you find out you're pregnant is now when you're at the stage you can consent. You can either consent to carrying that fetus, or child, whatever you want to call it, and then you have to
Mhm.
carry that consent. It has to be ongoing consent throughout the whole of the time you carry it, or you no longer consent and you should be given the ability to remove it from your body, simply because I don't think there's any other instance where we allow a human or person to take our individual resources, specifically like our
Sure.
bodily resources, without our say
Right.
so.
Right. No, motherhood is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly specific and unique. There's no other circumstance like that. I don't think it should be treated like any other circumstance, though, either.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just worry that it hits a point where it hits a precedent where we're going to open up the floodgates to being able to. But what I'd really love to know, so like you say, you grant personhood at conception, right?
Mhm.
You would say, what about it at the stage of conception would you consider it to be a person? Is it just that it's like the DNA, or like what is it specific for you?
And it's not even really personhood. Like I don't think about personhood. I think you being a human, you're a person. Like I
Okay.
don't. There's no thought behind that
Mm-hmm.
really. But I just it's a new little dude. It's a new person. It's a new human, a new individual that is completely genetically distinct from mom and dad. Like it's a new little person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Would
I just there's no other way to use person.
this view of not harming a person other than self-defense, because I know you're pro gun, I'm pro 2A as well. I don't really care. I don't get in much into the gun debate, so I know that self-defense
Yeah.
you're probably a 100% okay with. Other than self-defense, do you think there are okay reasons to kill a person?
Um, I mean, if you give me examples, like if you had an example, I am anti-death penalty with exceptions, the same way I am anti-abortion with exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times it is better to have these people rot away in prison and let the world go on around them.
Mm-hmm.
than waste the money to lethal inject them, give them the easy way out, let them go out a martyr, all kinds of whatever nonsense they're going to make up. But in cases of like with kids, especially sex things with kids, or if it's extremely heinous, I'm open to that. But if you had an example of something else, I'm all ears.
Yeah, so just to analogize to abortion, and by the way, we won't talk about it, but just we do differ in one thing. I'm very for the abolishment of prisons, so we very
Okay.
much differ in that. We won't get into that. We won't get
Interesting.
into that right now.
Okay.
But if you want to talk about it at a future date, I'll follow you and we can talk about it at a
Yeah.
future date. But so to analogize to abortions, when I look at the fetus in the stage at the start of pregnancy, what I see
Okay.
is a being who has all the qualifiers for being human that we see on like a genetic level. So genetically,
Hmm.
it's human, it's got human
Right.
DNA. My question then becomes, would killing it be wrong? So I want to look at other instances in our real life society where do we kill things that have human DNA and are living? And I actually see that in like a brain dead person. So other than
Okay.
the fact that a brain dead person no longer has the cognitive ability to have consciousness or sentience,
Hmm.
whichever one you want to use, the brain dead person is very similar to the fetus. Its body, if
Okay.
it's hooked up to life support, its body will still work. Its cells will still divide. Its hair will grow. It'll still grow. It'll change. It'll do all of these things. However, the person side of it, which is where I get into the personhood, the person is no longer there. So, like, if I
Okay.
were to go brain dead, I'm gone, right? I'm not here anymore, but my body is still here. And so I ask
Right.
myself, is it okay to pull the plug on that body and let that body die? And I would argue that because the person's not there anymore, it's absolutely okay. It's not, I mean, I would let the family decide, just like I would in abortion. I'd let the mother decide. But like, I don't see
Okay.
an issue with pulling the plug on that body. And then I look at a fetus and see that a fetus prior to 20 weeks specifically, because that's really when the prefrontal cortex starts to form, that a fetus is
Hmm.
in that same sort of state. If I'm looking at it, if I take a fetus at 13 weeks, there is no
Hmm.
brain function. There's not a person there. So I won't be causing any harm to this creature because it can't, there's no conceptualization of harm. It's not
Okay.
experiencing anything. So it physically can't be harmed. So I just wonder what's the difference between that, which has all the same qualifiers as somebody who's brain dead, and then someone who's brain dead. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
So I just don't view the personhood argument. I don't, it does not carry much, if any, weight for me as far as like they've experienced or they're aware of what's going on, or just, I just don't think, to me, that's not enough of a justification.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that person is still on life support and we go in there and we stab them, we inject something into their heart, we do something like that, and then we kill them and
Mm-hmm.
end every brain function, heart, everything, I think that is still wrong, even if they don't know that it happened.
Well, it's not so much that they don't know, it's that it's impossible for them to know. Right? If you're brain dead, then every function of your brain has ceased to work. It no
Right.
longer works, it can't come back. So I think when I'm looking at like a conscious human experience or a sentient human experience, that we value that almost intrinsically, because the second you lose that, we don't consider you a person anymore. We don't consider you a human. I mean, we consider you akin to a body.
Mm,
You know what I mean? We because doctors in most states have the authority to just pull the plug if they want to pull the plug. If you go brain dead, they don't have to put you
right.
on life support. They don't have to keep your body working. So I just wonder why it's different for a fetus, because I would consider a pregnant person and in the relationship they have with a fetus very akin to life support. That fetus can only perform its homeostasis processes via the connection it has to the mother.
I I don't agree with not viewing it as a person anymore. Someone on life support, someone that's brain dead, is, I definitely would still view that as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And people still, the family, I'm sure, would still view that as a person. Even if they took them off life support, I don't think they would cease to be a person once you go on life support.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's different when we're talking about someone that has had something happen. Obviously, something has to happen for you to go brain dead. You don't just like, and then get hooked up to machines that are not natural to your body, versus pregnancy being an entirely biological process, all of these things are supposed to happen. Left naturally, everything that is supposed to happen will happen, and that fetus will develop and grow and become a bigger clump of cells and a more complex being.
Hmm.
I just think it's different than if someone were to have an accident or something happen, hooking them up to artificial machinery, and then saying that that's similar to a fetus developing. Because it's only up for the fetus, it's only down for the person
So
brain
what
dead.
I worry about that is that we're now arguing based on its potential. The reason why I clarify is I look at what it's working with its current capacity, right? So a fetus will eventually have the potential to have a brain and have a functioning human consciousness and a human experience, wherever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But in its current state, it doesn't. And I worry about arguments from potential. Like when we say that this will eventually be this thing, so we have to let it become this thing, or we have to treat it like it is that thing in its current stage. Because I can have a 5-year-old and say a 5-year-old has the potential to become 21. So why don't I give it alcohol now? Or I can even take potential back and say, well, the sperm and egg have the same potential, because potential is just a concept. They have the same
Sure.
potential that a fetus has. So why aren't we
Right.
protecting them in the exact same way?
Because at the point that it's in, it is a new human. It is
Hmm.
a new, it's not potentially a human, it is already a human.
Well, we're not so much talking about whether it's a human, right? Because under the ability of being human, it's just got to be human DNA, which a sperm and an egg both have, right?
It's a new human. It's not a cell with human DNA from the mom or human DNA from the dad. It is a new human, a new organism with its own distinct human DNA.
Okay, so just it being that new organism is what grants it enough rights in your mind that
Yes.
that's where all the protection has to lie.
Yes.
I guess for me, I just worry that we as a society are placing too much emphasis on just the DNA aspect.
Okay.
I do worry where that will get us in the future when we start, furthering like cloning and stuff. I mean, we've cloned
Mhm.
a sheep before. It like if because that clone is not unique DNA, would we say we can abort a clone? I worry where we get into like when we get into like the science fiction that's, eventually going to show up at some point. Um my
Yeah.
my only then question for you on that is when it comes to rights of the fetus,
Okay.
because I assume you would say the fetus has a right to life, it has a right to not be
Yeah.
aggressed upon. You had
Sure.
mentioned that when left to its own devices, the fetus would grow and it would do all of that. What I'm interested in is, what if the mother decides to stop eating? So she's not harming the fetus via anything directly. She herself is just stopped eating. The fetus will usually in medical cases die prior to the woman dying.
Mhm.
Would that be acceptable since she's not exerting any form of harm on the fetus, like any external harm? She's just not allowing her body to get nutrients. What would you think in a situation like that?
Are we assuming the woman doesn't know that that would directly affect her baby?
Oh, she knows. I think she probably knows, and
Okay.
she's unable to get like an abortion for via whatever means. So this is her way. She said, "Okay, I'm going to just stop eating, which is not me directly hurting the fetus. I'm just refusing
But
to
it
give
is.
myself nutrients."
But that is directly hurting the fetus because if you're making that decision with that in mind, that's that's the purpose. That's the only reason that you would do that.
Sure, but I think there's a difference between I'm exerting force to hurt it and I'm just not giving it nutrients that were mine to begin with. You know what I
Purposefully.
mean?
Like, would you think leaving a baby out in the woods alone and just letting it die, is that wrong or is that just
I
you're
would
not really
I
doing
would say
anything to
that's
it?
wrong because the baby, once it's born, has its own level of bodily autonomy, because that's the right I really worry about. And your bodily
Okay.
autonomy cannot be aggressed upon by another human unless it's to end a rights violation. So just leaving a baby in the woods is not ending a rights violation against you. So I don't think it's okay to affect its bodily autonomy in that manner.
So you said a human,
Hmm.
you can't affect another human. That's what you would be doing if you were to stop eating. So if I were to be pregnant, however far along I am, and I just stop eating because I'm like, I don't want to do this. I can't get an abortion, so this is the next best option. I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah,
That's still
the only
with the
difference
same.
though is that a
Mhm.
fetus is not autonomous. So I don't grant it bodily autonomy until it becomes an autonomous being. And birth is what makes you become an autonomous being. So once it's autonomous and no longer relying, which is why I also have this, why I have the viability stance as well. Once it's autonomous
Okay.
and can exist on its own, I grant it a different set of rights than when it can exist solely via the life support of another person. Because I do think having your resources taken when you don't want them to be is a rights violation. And even though the fetus may not be actively aggressing, it is still an aggressor in that sense.
Okay.
So
I mean,
that's
I don't agree, but like, I appreciate the point.
yeah, for sure. I'll give you a follow. If you ever want to hear my
Beautiful.
take on prisons, let me know,
Yeah,
because I am staunchly for the abolishment of police and prisons.
that's crazy to me. But I've also never dived, dove. I can speak English, I promise. Into that, so I wouldn't.
Oh, I got a couple books
That's
you can
cool.
read if you're ever
Oh,
interested. If you're ever
please.
interested.
I love it. Please do.
All right. Well, thanks for the conversation. You have a great
Yeah,
rest of your day. I'm sure with your guest requests
okay.
open, you got a bunch of people trying to get in.
I have 4 people just waiting, and I'm, like, stressing.
Hopefully they're all as respectful as I was.
I hope so. This was great. Well, have a good night.
All right, you too.